What was the worst road rage incident you have witnessed? About 2 weeks after I got my license, I was on the highway and accidentally cut off some lady while trying to move into the far left lane. When I first looked over my shoulder, she was way behind, but I guess she sped up when she saw me trying to merge. Anyway, after laying on her horn for a minute or two, she pulls up into the adjacent lane so she can scream at me through her open window. This whole time, I'm just trying not to panic, since I was still pretty terrified of driving on the highway, so I just kept my eyes on the road while she yelled obscenities at me. Then, out of fucking nowhere, some explodes on my driver's side window. It was an apple. The lady threw a fucking apple out of her passenger window at my car. I was shocked but also genuinely impressed. It was a pretty good throw for someone driving 80 miles per hour. I was a bit slow taking off from a green light, and the guy behind me went apeshit on the horn, so I stopped and just sat there, single lane, so he couldn't get around. He got out, walked up to my car and started shouting at me. I turned the radio to max volume, and said sorry, can't hear you, then drove off right before the light turned red, leaving him standing and screaming. So much, win. About 15 years ago, I was driving home from the doctor. I had pneumonia. I was on some pretty strong meds and was dozing off behind the wheel, so I rolled down the window and cranked some rap music up. At a red light, a truck pulled up and this scoony-looking hillbilly starts yelling at me. He yells out, "Are you black?" I yell out, "F you, you racist motherfucker." The light turns green and I take off. He starts chasing me. I turn off into a neighborhood to try to lose him, but he cuts me off and blocks me so I can't get around his car. He then gets out of his car and starts to approach mine. I had this little baseball bat in my car. I had gotten at a minor league game a few weeks ago. I grabbed it and got out of my car to wait for the dude to come over. I held the bat low by my leg and I guess he didn't notice it. He walks over and start wagging his finger in my face telling me he's gonna kick my ass. I close my eyes and can still remember this next part clear as day. I take the bat and swing it right against the side of his face, as hard as I could. The bat breaks in pieces and I'm left holding the handle. The dude reaches up and grabs the side of his face and falls to the ground. I drop the bat handle, walk back to my car, back up down the street and went home. It was, by far the craziest thing I have ever experienced. Had I not been sick and was thinking clearly, I would have acted differently. I never heard anything about it. Mine's pretty tame. I was leaving work late at night, after a long day and just wanted to get the fuck home when I found myself behind an SUV, doing about 40 miles per hour on the airport spare, 50 miles per hour limit. My exit wasn't for another half mile or so I went to pass him in the left lane to get around his slow ass. All of a sudden, he starts accelerating to pace me because I think he figured out what I was trying to do, and decided to play douchebag. After the brief impromptu drag race, I eventually got around him and cut his ass off just in time to hit the ramp. The bad news was that I had already exceeded 80 miles per hour when I passed him. Yes, he was that big of a douche, and there happened to be a sheriff behind us that saw this whole thing happen, ended up getting pulled over, while the asshole who caused me to rage in the first place was probably grinning like a Cheshire cat as he passed both of us coming to a stop on the shoulder. Got a $351 ticket for my actions. Long story short, some asshole decided to speed up as I was passing him. Rage kicked in. Sheriff pulled my car over for speeding while the douche drove happily off. Meh, agreed with Zo off. Unlucky but you deserved it. Props to you for posting this story. I didn't think anyone would have the guts to admit to being the road rager. My dad and I were driving home and we get cut off by a guy. We were shaken, but changed lanes and hope we never see him again. A few minutes later, we pass this guy in the opposite lane, and the driver and his wife, or his sister wife, I'm assuming, you know how rednecks are with their siblings, starts taunting us. Both cars have their windows down, so my dad stares straight ahead, flips him off, and drives away. A few minutes later, my dad looks in his rearview and sees the car approaching us with the woman hanging out of the window, holding some kind of tool. It looked like a hammer, and my dad started to get freaked out. We took the next exit and the guy flew past it, so we thought we were safe. But as we are on the off-ramp at a red light, we see the guy pull onto the shoulder, back up on the freeway to the exit, and drive up. The light turned green and there were a lot of cars in between us, and we booked it. About 10 minutes later, we see this guy still behind us. We get stuck at a red light with him right behind us. He parks the car, walks towards the driver's side door and starts kicking my dad's door, screaming at my dad to open the door, "You fucking pussy," and kept kicking. We were facing north, and in the eastbound side of the room is a bike cop, in very tight booty shorts, who sees what's going on. He hits his lights and sirens and heads over. The guy kicking my dad's door see this, screams fuck, and runs towards his car. He doesn't make it. He gets arrested with his retarded wife screaming let him go. He was just playing, as well as calling my dad every name in the book. Posted this to share this story that happened to me yesterday. Needs a little context. The washing machine at my apartment has been broken for the past week and a half. My only option to do laundry is to go to a public one or drive 20 minutes to my mom's and get it done there. Haven't done laundry in almost 2 weeks, so my clothes supply was running really low, and yesterday was my day off, so I had to get it done that day. I drive to mom's and start the laundry, and then head back to my place to do some cleaning to kill time. Thing is, I wanted to wash whatever I could in this one trip, so I took off the shorts I was wearing to add them to the load. So there I was, driving back to my place in only underwear, a t-shirt and a towel wrapped around my waist. I'm driving down my mum's street, which is a school zone, so the speed limit is 25 during school hours and 35 when it's not. I'm doing the speed limit when a guy pulls out of a parking lot and is riding my ass so hard the motion detector in my car is going off non-stop. The guy is leaning on his horn, acting a fool and shouting profanity at me. Eventually we come to a red light, and the guy pulls up next to me and puts the nose of his car in front of mine. He starts yelling at me that if I'm not going to do the speed limit to get off the road and other macho bullshit. I tell him that the speed limit is 25 during school hours, and I'm not about to get a ticket because he wants to drive like an asshole. Once I called him an asshole, he puts his car in park and starts walking around his car telling me to get out and say it again. In the heat of the moment, I forgot I was not wearing pants. I've always considered myself a lover and not a fighter, but I'm not a bitch, and don't have an issue defending myself. As he got closer to my car, I jumped out and said he drives like an asshole once again. Then it happens the towel around my waist drops, and I'm standing at the red light in nothing but boxers and a t-shirt. He gets close and realized that I was half naked, and a little hard. It took a very interesting turn. It went from a very heated discussion to very awkward and quiet. I was embarrassed, and from the way his face turned bright red, I assume he was too. No other words were spoken. He turned around, got in his car, and I got in mine, and we both awkwardly drove away once the light turned green. I can't remember which one, but a comedian did a bit that he said he would avoid fights by getting completely naked. No one wants to fight a guy who's naked, with balls jiggling about. Apparently, you only need to be half naked. I don't know about worst, but here's one. The scene: college road trip. Heading down from New Brunswick to Philly for cheesesteaks and Italian ice. It's me driving, with 5 other people crammed into my 2-door sports car. Beside me in the passenger seat is the insufferable goth boyfriend of one of the girls in the back. We're not even out of town yet, and I'm ready to kill him. He's bitching and whining, and being a twat, messing with the radio. AC is broken, so the windows are rolled all the way down, but we're sitting in a long ass line of cars waiting to get on the turnpike, and it's hot as balls. My buddy, who is crammed in the back with 3 girls and having the time of his life, feels my pain, and like a true friend is stirring the shit with all that he's got. He's got goth boy off on a deeply irritating tangent, and I'm praying the line will move so I can get on the goddamn road. So finally the line starts moving, and, out of fucking nowhere, this asshole in a Beamer comes shooting up the fucking shoulder to cut me off. I gun it to close the gap so he can't, and I turn to give him the finger, and I'll never forget what I saw then. When I turned, all I saw was goth boy's fucking Doc Martens in the window. The Beamer driver, like me, was driving with all his windows down, and my angsty co-pilot had seen this, and had taken the opportunity to lunge out the goddamn window and give Beamer boy a piece of his mind. He was fucking in the other car, screaming in the guy's face. I can only imagine the trauma, driving in your Beamer, master of all you survey, top of the world, listening to whatever assholes listen to on the radio, and then wham, goth boy out of fucking nowhere. I leaned over, grabbed his belt, and hauled his skinny ass back in the car, then accelerated down the lane to get my ticket for the turnpike. In the rear view, I can see the guy in the Beamer, still sitting on the shoulder, immobile with shock. It was a pretty good trip after that. Goth boy, making up for his Winnie wrongdoings, and finding common ground by hurling himself into someone else's car. Was at a red light, and 3 cars behind me, a guy gets out of his car and approached the car in front of him, 2 behind me, and starts yelling at the driver. This goes on for just a few seconds when he reaches into the driver's window and starts punching the driver. Driver then opens the door and pushes the guy backwards with the car door and starts yelling at the guy to get back in his car, and guy approaches driver and tries to hit him again, so driver defends himself and absolutely smashed this guy. Guy stumbles to the side of the road while driver jumps back in his car and takes off. This only took a few minutes, but by now the lights have turned green, and the guy is bleeding from his nose and multiple cuts on his eye. Guy turned out to be an ex-journalist, and gave an interview after saying that the reason he approached the driver was because the driver flicked a cigarette butt out of the car window and he was passionate about litter, but then he started complaining that no one intervened or helped him. As soon as he started punching the driver, I was on the phone to police. I was 3 cars back from the lights, so if I got out of my car, then I'd block the lane when the lights went green, and at the time, I was about 20 years old and the 2 guys were 40-ish. As soon as the lights turned green, I pulled over and got out of the car while still on the phone to police. I didn't approach the guy cause he was the one who started the assaults. I ended up being an hour late to work as I waited for police and ambulance and gave a police statement. The guy was a massive douchebag and got what was coming to him. My worst experience. It was about 3 a.m. I was trying to get on the freeway, and this dude in a giant SUV wouldn't let me merge. It was one of those on-ramps that turns into an off-ramp if you stay on it, so basically he was forcing me to exit. I sped up to try and get ahead of him before getting forced out. He sped up too, so I hit the brakes instead, cut over behind him and got on the freeway, past him on the left, so he gunned it. Got right up on my ass with his brights on honking, then he gunned it again, like he was trying to hit me. I sped up to get away from him but he kept doing it, so I figured, fuck this guy, I'm out. So I go to exit, he speeds up, pulls up to my left side and then swerves at me. I swerved with him, then he did it again. Again I swerved with him. At this point we are pretty close to the guardrail, then he did it again. I had nowhere else to go so I slammed on my brakes. He was centimeters from hitting the guardrail. He was definitely trying to hit me, so I floor it. I pass him on the left again, and once again he's back up on my ass. At 90 miles per hour, I brake checked him, he hit his brakes, swerved, spun out and slammed into the guardrail. I got the fuck out of there and called the cops. Fucking psycho. I have this really bad habit when driving, which called driving at the speed limit. I once had someone drive after me to my house and shout abuse about how slow I was going. It's not the worst, but I'm always amazed at being the bad guy for following the rules. I just had a similar situation about 10 minutes ago, only they didn't follow me to my house. This car tailgated me for a good 15 minutes before I finally turned into my neighborhood. Looking in the rear view mirror, I was treated to the finger, and I think she even threw something at me, or maybe it was just an angry motion with her hand. I don't know. Funny thing was, I was already going 5 over the limit the whole time. The town I live in is famous for stuff like this, unfortunately. Funny how even when you follow the law, you're still treated poorly. Laugh out loud. I was driving down a highway in the middle of nowhere, Iowa a couple of years ago. I was going exactly at the speed limit, maybe a couple of miles per hour faster. No other traffic in sight except for the pickup that eased up to tailgating level right behind me. After a few minutes of that situation, I saw a deer on the side of the road a couple hundred yards ahead, so I started easing my speed down to be prepared, give the deer space in case something unpredictable happened. The pickup behind me laid on their horn when I did that. They swerved into the left lane, flipping me off as he passed. Then he crashed into the deer, laugh out loud, who had been spooked by the horn and jumped out into the middle of the highway. Karma happens, I guess. I used to drive semi-trucks 10 plus years ago, and I had plenty of experiences with road rage. I am mainly on the receiving end, because people seem to think that a 40-ton 60-70 foot long vehicle can perform like a car. I was going through an interchange, and the merge ramp was 2 lanes wide. I was in the left lane, because the right one goes away rather quickly. A beat-up pickup is driving right next to me the entire time. I keep wondering where he is going since the lane goes away. I am not even going fast, maybe 50 miles per hour since it is a transition ramp, and you have to initially slow down, so he could have easily passed me. Semis aren't really known for their acceleration. I figured I would slow down if he signaled, but he never did. Finally his lane starts pinching out and he is still about 10 foot behind the nose of my truck. He slams on his brakes and drops behind me. Once behind me, he whips over, comes up on my left side, pulls in front of me and pulls a brake check. I don't hit him, but I sort of smirk at the stupidity. A semi can't stop very fast, and in a situation like this, the semi can ride up and over a standard car. While I would survive fine, the dumbass brake checking me could have died. You see a lot of stupid stuff when you drive big rig. Long story short, don't brake check a tractor trailer. Not mine, but my brother's. And on to exactly road rage either, but it fits. My grandma was in intensive care, dying. We'd been to say goodbye to her that day. Pretty emotional. My brother leaves, then driving to his girlfriend's gets stuck in some mid-afternoon traffic. A college-age kid, UK so 16-18, and his girlfriend are clearly having a passionate argument at a bus stop, at the side of the road, screaming, crying and flailing arms. The kid then runs out into the traffic, in front of my brother's slowly crawling car, slams both his hands on the bonnet and screams, "Just fucking kill me." Brother calmly pulls on the handbrake, steps out of the vehicle, picks the kid up by the scruff of his neck, throws him down on the pavement, and says, "Not today, pal." Brother gets back into his car to the applause of the trucker behind him. Not sure if this counts, but it was a taxi driver in Boston. My friend and I were trying to hail a cab, so we were standing on the opposite ends of the corner. We happened to hail a cab at the same time, but we decided to go into the one I hailed. Apparently the taxi driver that my friend hailed must have interpreted this as the other taxi driver stealing his fare and didn't take it too well. He first blocked the entire road, so we couldn't get through. Our driver had to drive on the sidewalk to get around him. When we got past him, he proceeded to drive to chase after us. When we got to a light, the taxi driver got out, took out a knife, and started slashing our taxi driver's tires. Light turned green, and when we got to the next light it happened again. He got out, started slashing his tires. This time though, he went for the door handle on my side to open it, but it was luckily locked. After this, we lost him, but felt like he was going to stab our driver or us. A guy passed me and I thought he was sticking something dark out of his window and I was confused. It turns out it was a black guy and he was flipping me off. I have no idea what I did to make him mad. You were being not black probably. I don't know if stupid motorcyclists count as road ragers, but bear with me. I was driving a Chrysler 300 that the Arab dealership had loaned us after our car crapped out 1,000 miles from home in the middle of fucking nowhere, Oregon, with my little brother in the passenger seat. The dealership kept promising our car would be fixed in a couple of days, and we didn't have any money, so we'd spent the better part of 2 weeks camping around the area, visiting national parks and such. So here we are, in our completely inappropriate camping vehicle, cruising very carefully through a national park on a very windy, very narrow road with a rock wall on one side, and a cliff on the other, trying to avoid the ire of the rednecks in their pavement princesses, and the incompetence of grandmothers in their 40-foot RVs. I was not about to die in a borrowed Chrysler by flying off a cliff, so I was following the rules to a T. So we're going around an absolute breakneck curve on the side of this cliff, going about 25, which is the absolute maximum one should attempt at such a time, when the guy on a crotch rocket who's been riding up my tailpipe for the past 5 miles, fucking floors it to pass me on a blind curve, double yellow line, with an RV facing him dead on. He dips to make the turn, practically touching the fucking ground with his shoulder, practically clipping the front corner of the RV, and fucking makes it, but only because I slammed on my brakes to avoid killing him. This, of course, causes his fuck buddy to nearly rear-end me, and, being now pissed off at me and having seen his buddy pull this stupid shit and get away with it, tries the exact same shit and comes even closer to dying than the first guy. I'm honking, the terrified people in the other lane are honking, and everyone's trying their best to A. not kill these idiots and B. not kill themselves by way of rock or 1,000-foot fall. There was fucking nowhere to pull over, so I white-knuckled it to the next ranger station, about 8 more miles, and proceeded to have a fucking breakdown. I love motorcycles, my family all ride, and I understand being an adrenaline junkie and wanting to have a good time on a windy road. But for God's sake, do not put other people in danger like that, you selfish assholes. Shit. Laughing my ass off. Sorry, I remembered and I am typing now. So, like 5 years ago my friend is driving and I am in the passenger seat. He's making a left turn, and the guy in front of us, coming towards us, has his blinker to make a right turn, our side, so it'll be a left turn his side. Guy had his blinkers fucked up and was turning the same way as us. Both, my friend and the guy get into a screaming match and finally my friend says, well yeah, next time use your fucking blinker. Guy goes, I did. My friend goes, for the wrong way. Guy goes, oh shit really? Well I'm sorry. Friend goes, no, it's okay. Have a great day. And guy goes, thanks. You too. Be safe out here. And the guy continues while my friend is behind him and I'm there like, what the fuck just happened? Laughing my ass off. Short story at the bottom. So I'm driving down the freeway, and this twat in a supercar throws some little thing towards my car. It doesn't hit my car but instead another car. Turns out, this guy threw a Molotov cocktail at me. Anyways, the car he hit was actually a police cruiser. So policeman swerves into me, and turns his sirens on, then he tries to pull me over. I make a run for it, and crash my car in a ditch. I escape out towards the beach, but then a fucking jet blows me up. Long story short. Played Grand Theft Auto Online. With that out of the way, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want more content to keep appearing in your subscription box. Thanks for watching and until next time.